If you go too heavy too early, then it will fill the surface up with pastel, and you won't be able to add additional color to it.
We are live with the guest, Tom Christopher, great artist. Tom, what are you going to do for us today?
Today, I'm going to show you how I bring color and painting into your paintings.
Color and texture, right?
Color and texture into your paintings, correct.
All right. Well, I'm going to show some of your paintings now, and we're going to be back with you in just a second. So if you want to see what Tom Christopher does, this is incredible work. He works in pastel, and if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of like sophisticated crayons. It's not chalk, it's actually pigment, but does absolutely beautiful, stunning work. And you're going to learn how he gets this to really stand out. And he's got a really interesting technique, which he's going to show you here. And so we'll learn more about that. But first, let's get the show rolling.
Just briefly, I'm going to explain a little bit about what I'm going to be concentrating on.
All right.
One of them is my pastel strokes, which are nothing more than strokes that you make with the pastel like you would a coloring book, let's say. Some of them are very light, some of them are heavy. Very few of them are straight lines. I was watching a video this week where they interviewed Scott Christensen, and he talked about variety. I took that to mean as variety as well as in your strokes and shapes in a painting. Not too many shapes in nature are identical, so you want to make it varied as possible, each one pointing a different direction, anything to create a little energy. Over in this demo I did, probably just before the pandemic, at a workshop I was doing, I kind of use that kind of method to create some interest. I want to do a little bit of that today. As you can see, it's very limited in palette, and I chose to use warm colors in this winter scene, which is pretty unusual in itself. However, if you keep your values close and correct, you can almost use any color to do a landscape painting. Not too many people would choose these colors to do a winter scene. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
It does.
Good. I'll put this aside.
All right.
And this is the painting I'll be working on today.
All right.
This is all underpainting, which is a painting I use before I apply pastel to the board. This is usually watercolor. In this case, it was watered down acrylic. But you can see it's pretty extensive.
Can you tell us what kind of paper that is? It sounds very rough.
It is, and it's because I coated this surface with some pastel, some pumice gel medium, which is a grit, much like what you would find in sanded paper, pastel paper.
So it's a regular panel or it's a canvas? What is it exactly?
I do have some right here. It's called fine pumice gel.
Okay, and what do you put it on? Are you putting it on a panel or a surface or paper or what?
It's a skater board.
Okay.
And this dries clear. I mix it with water and put a light coat. After I do this watercolor scene, I let it dry and then I coated it with this fine pumice gel.
All right.
Like I said, it dries clear. So when I apply a pastel to it, it will pick up a lot of that texture.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is how I apply the pastel. If you just do the pastels, I usually break the regular sticks in half and use it much like a paintbrush, the side of it instead of the point. So you get more of a cast rather than a point like that.
All right.
Hopefully that's coming through. So Like most painters in pastel, I start with the darks first. And I'm looking at my reference photo, and I can see an area right here that's pretty dark. Right there, right here, and of course under here, it's going to be dark because the light's coming from this side. It's kind of a filtered light. However, it still will cast a little shadow on you. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this dark pastel. Most of the pastels I use are Terry Ludwig's because of the shape basically. And they're they come in kind of a square. So they have
you need to tell Terry Ludwig that he needs to be part of Pastel Live. He's a legend. We need him in there. He's going to sell so much product.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people use these pastels.
Yeah.
Here's a new one, and it comes like in, I guess, a rectangle with sharp edges. Unlike, let's say, a Mount Vision, it's kind of a rounded thing. So, with that in mind, I'll start with these Terry Ludwig pastels because they probably work best with this textured surface. I'm going to go ahead and, although I don't carry black, Terry's got a set of really dark colors that I like to start with, and this happens to be purple. So I'm going to go ahead and cast these real light strokes right through here.
And when I see this, I just get so excited. I want to go out to my studio right now and get the pastels going, babe.
And when I'm laying down these strokes, I don't very often lift my hand off the surface. I just go to the next area and lightly, with these very long, light strokes, go over these darkest areas. It's kind of really a relaxing way to look at things. One of the reasons I like to keep the strokes light is so I can add pastel over the top. If you go too heavy too early, then it will fill the surface up with pastel, and you won't be able to add additional color to it. Okay.
I see here, Tom, you got people watching from Connemara, from Pakistan, from Holland. Well, you got an international audience.
Never been to Pakistan.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
They've got great things to paint there.
Oh, I believe. Again,
now why are you blotting?
Because I was just going to mention that because I work on this textured surface, if I start rubbing it like this, it'll automatically cover up the texture.
All right.
So I want to just tap it and take that top surface of loose pastel off the top. Okay. All right. The way my palette is set up, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got all my darks.
Cannot see it. Yeah.
And I'm right-handed, so I start with my darks and then I move to my left.
All right.
I will take a next lighter value from that dark and go over it right here. It's all about building planes with these values. And I'll go over some of this previously applied pastel. All these little changes in value will eventually, hopefully, turn into something very interesting. Okay.
You know, Dennis, rather than using pumice gel, I actually get on an airplane and fly over to the base of the volcano in Italy and bring back a big bag. That way I have my own pumice.
Well, maybe you'll be willing to sell some of that. I bet that's good stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to go into the pumice business.
All right. When I'm working with greens, and I don't know if you can show my demo photo again, but there's a lot of blues in this green that normally you wouldn't plan on putting in, but in the Midwest, we like to build these groves along the driveways into the farmsteads, and sometimes they'll mix the different pines together. So there's actually blue spruce and there's red pine and white pine. So it's all there just to stop the wind from blowing in on the farms.
Where in the Midwest are you?
We're right in central Iowa.
All right. Good. Got a lot of corn.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I spent a lot of time working on the farm.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Right now I'm in a kind of a mid-tone. It might not show that on the canvas so well, but I notice when I do a lot of workshops, a lot of students will stay right in the mid-tone. They don't put enough healthy darks in there. So I want to suggest to everybody that start with a good healthy dark and make it real light. As you apply more pastel to it, it will show these kind of hidden areas that really cause a lot of interest for me.
Values are everything.
Right. Okay. Moving along here. I'm going to go and start adding a little light to this. So most of this painting was actually done with underpainting, so I don't have to add a lot of pastel to it. But I'll show you real quickly how I begin to add light. If I wanted to add a light, let's say with this right here, this is an actual green. I'm just going to test it right here and see, again, a very light stroke there. Hopefully you'll be able to pick up some of this.
Yep.
Some of this texture coming through. Again, very, very, very
I think that's a good lesson, that you talked about that Scott teaches, and that is everything should have variety.
That's right. And I actually, after I watched that interview with Scott Christensen, I went and looked at my paintings to make sure that I was putting in enough variation in my strokes and the subject matter.
There's a question from Paul, which says, how did he add the linear lines that show through the pastel application?
That's a good question. When I was preparing this board, I actually drip paint onto it, house paint, and you'll get these kind of lines if you do the Jackson Pollock dripping on a painting. You'll get this kind of thin lines that are hard to paint. Also, if you tap it with the wet paint, if you tap it with the cloth, you'll get this kind of sense of foliage. Does that make sense? This is a good example right here. And this is just house paint. When I cast over that with the pastel, let's see, I'll bring out, let's try this one. You'll pick up some of that. I'll just take a little blue here. You can see how that breaks up and gets kind of a broken color look to it. Is that coming across?
Yeah.
Good. So that's where that is. I hope that answers his question. Actually, that comes off pretty good as just a fence line there leading into my grove of trees. So I'll leave that alone right now.
So you really created variety in your underground, if you will, with the pumice and with the drips.
Yeah, I think so too. And I really like that loose kind of unfinished look to it. That kind of helps the variety. Okay, as we move into the really light areas, I'm gonna leave this alone here because this is just for demonstration. And I probably don't have a lot of time. I'm gonna actually take some blue here and show you how I can hopefully bring some of this tree line forward and some of it back. So I'm kind of looking for this forward and back motion here with just a little more texture. People say, well, why do you use blue? And I said, well, the value's there.
There's a question from Rajat, probably in India or Pakistan. How much rough paper one should use for pastel work?
How much rough paper?
In other words, I think he's asking, how rough should the paper be?
Oh, yeah, that's a matter of personal taste. Now, sanded paper comes in various grits. I think when I was working on sanded paper, I think I used a 400 grit. It was kind of the middle, but you can go as heavy or as light as you want.
Okay.
The problem I've had with the real textured heavy paper was it wouldn't accept water very well or an underpainting.
And you want to have that water underneath for acrylic or watercolor.
Absolutely, and that's why I chose this Gator board, which is light, and you can paint anything you want on it. In fact, I think famous artists actually painted oils on Gator board and sold them. So, but it works well for my process since I'll do an extensive underpainting before I add the pastels.
Yep. Great. Let's keep going.
All right. Since I'm a big lover of green and red, and I've used it in practically all my paintings, I'm going to add a little red to this. Because, as everybody knows, green and red are complementary. So, in fact, there was a show called Red Green. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was
nobody is quite as old as you are, Tom.
Do you remember it?
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh, it was called Red Green, and it was on, I think, PBS.
Of course.
Anyway, he wore red and green suspenders. That's why I always think of it. But as you can see, that kind of flavor that comes through with the red and green.
It really offers balance.
Right. And that warm and cool really seems to work together. So.
Well, you're not crazy. There's several people coming in say they remember the Red Green show.
Oh,
it's a Canadian show.
That's right. Yes, it was kind of a comedy, and it was really funny. You'll have to look that up sometime.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, I'm going to take actually black, I think, is this color, just to create a little more depth. I'm going to add a little dark to these areas.
Boy, that gives dimension immediately.
Right, and I'm looking for that sense of having a plane, one in front of the other, this being in front of this, in front of that. And hopefully it's coming through a little bit. Again, I'm just slowly adding pastel to this. And my strokes are going every which way. Okay. This is kind of a nice area here with that. If you want to push that even farther, you can take this really light green, and if that light's coming from this area, you can actually pinpoint an area where the light's really shining.
Now that would be your focal point?
Right. And a lot of times I'll work an area like this until a focal point actually reveals itself. So if I put this right here and decide to put a piece of light here, then that would definitely direct the viewer to that area. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm going to actually put a little fence here to help the idea of using that as a focal point. All All right, then the area I'm going to concern myself here, since I've identified the focal area, is make a few of these really light strokes. And I'm not depicting anything in particular. And then work from there. I'm going to add just a couple tree trunks, maybe one here. When you're putting in trees that are in shadow, make sure you don't use a very light value. In fact, that may be too light, but let's actually make some color out of it. I'll make it a red pine. This.
Wow.
Okay.
If you guys are enjoying this, please hit the share button or the like button because everybody needs to see Tom paint.
Can you hear that sound when I apply the pastel?
What sound is that?
Of me applying the pastel to the board. It's pretty evident here. I don't know if you can hear it online or not.
Oh yeah, we hear it.
Oh, okay. I'm going to add just a little bit of red up here. Well, I'll use something different. Let's use here's a good color. This is kind of the yellow. It might depict a broken or a dying limb or something. Can you see that right here? It's very faint.
Oh yeah, very, very faint.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit to this foreground. How am I doing on time?
You're doing just fine.
Okay.
If I stop now, I'll have the truckers will come in and blockade me.
Yeah. Okay. I'll move a little fast here on this area around the tree. This is kind of a blue, a really cool blue. I'm going to break this up just a little bit.
I think some people think the sound of pastel is like chalk on a chalkboard.
Yeah, I can see that. I've got pretty used to it though. I would miss it if I didn't have it, I guess.
Have you worn off your fingertips?
Let's see. I'm going to make this field back here a little lighter.
Hey, Tom, talk to me about creating distance because you really did that just now.
Okay, distance is nothing more than cool and lighter values. I always use either a nice cool blue or a nice warm kind of yellow in front of a cool blue, but this is usually blue or light green. And it's pretty undefined. Just one large shape usually does it for me.
Question is, do you recycle your dust?
I make my own pastels once in a while, and one of the things you can do to get some mid-tone pastels is to actually mix it with distilled water, let it dry, and you can create your own pastels that way. So you can use them. I haven't recently, but when I come to an area where I may be low on one color, I may try to reproduce one using the dust.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Okay, this is I kind of like this area being as loose and undefined, so I'm just going to cast a light value over the color. It's kind of a neutral. Just to change the value just a little bit. What I mean by value is just the darkness and lightness of the painting. Okay, I'm going to just soften that. Again, I'm not scrubbing this by any means. I'm just touching it. All right, I'm gonna add a little dark to this fence row here. And some light.
Normally, do you wear a mask typically? Do you?
Well, I should. I haven't for years, but it's always a good idea. I do have this ventilator that I can turn on that's made especially for pastels, so it takes quite a bit of the dust away.
But it would be very noisy for a broadcast like this.
Right, and that's why I didn't turn it on today.
Is that chamois cloth you're using, or just paper towel?
Just regular Viva paper towel. I've always stuck with Viva because that's what Albert Handel always used, was Viva.
I'm going to see Albert Handel. We're going to have lunch here soon.
Oh, good. Tell him hi for me.
He's right here in my town. I'm in Bee Cave, Texas, Austin, and he's just 10 minutes away. So I'm going to hang out.
Darn. Yeah, I've taken several workshops from Albert, and I did a mentoring course with him too. That was just it was just Albert and I think 3 or 4 of us. That's been several years ago.
That says a lot about you.
Well, yeah. I still use a lot of his techniques. In fact, the idea of putting pastel over watercolor was, I think, basically his deal, and that's what he taught in his workshops. All right. I'm just going back and forth with the darks here a little bit, trying to create a little more interest, using different application strokes and this may be a little dark, so I'm going to add a few sky holes just to break things up a little bit. I'm not going to work on this guy right here.
I also wanted to point out that you've got a little portal there. Excuse me. I'm just getting my voice back, but the little portal just at the end of your whites there, it draws you back like you're going to walk through the woods. I like that.
Right here? In front?
No, up in the trees. Yeah, that white spot there.
Here.
Well, right by the fence line. It looks like a fence, but it feels like a portal. It kind of pulls you in.
Oh, I see. Okay, right in here maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to use kind of a, let's see, let's go with a, yeah, this is good. I don't want to go with white, obviously, because I want to try to match this. This is kind of a light tan almost. And I'm going to just put in some sky holes. Just to break up. And again, I'm using as many different strokes as I can just to be like I said, I don't want to make these too bright because then they become a focal area. Let's put in one right here. This actually comes down. I'm looking at my reference photo here. All right, and there's some areas of light coming through the base of these trees too. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a few of those in just to break up this mass. And you can create tree trunks that way, or just any kind of abstract shape you want to come up with.
I've never seen that done. That's kind of like ground holes.
Yeah, but the idea is that you look in under the trees and the light from the back is showing through. I think you could probably overdo this and it wouldn't look too natural, but if you want to create a little more depth in the base of those trees, I'm gonna go ahead and just add a little. I want everything to point to this area, obviously, so I'm just gonna break this up with one stroke. As I progress on these tree lines, I'm going to add just a little bit of detail. Now, I'm not a big detail person, but it's so much fun to add some of this red to the end of these tips here that I'm going to go ahead and put one in. Let's do this. Just a lighter value, and I like to keep the values really close. I'm going to take that real green and just match up to it there.
Nice.
I don't know if you can see it.
Nice.
It's pretty subtle, but it adds so much to a painting. Just little bits of light.
Yep. Beautiful.
Here's one right here. Not much, but you don't want it to take away from your focal area, but just that little bit of light will add so much to a painting. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more.
Very nice. Very nice. So what would you do with the foreground? If we run out of time, I'm curious what you would do in there.
I think what I'd do is probably darken this because I don't want this to be an area that you're going to spend a lot of time in. So it's going to be darker, probably about this shade. Whoops, let me get something.
I'm going to pull up your reference photo. So
Right.
quite a bit different, but yeah. Okay. So something darker.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm going to I like to put a little lead into the focal area. Sometimes with it doesn't have to be too obvious, but you want something that will lead into it. Maybe just a light area that would direct you to and you can go ahead and add whatever you want there, maybe a rock or anything that would take the viewer and direct them right to this area.
I think a good thing to think about when you're painting is that all roads lead to Rome, and Rome is your focal point. So everything essentially points to that focal point.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so true. Sometimes I don't even start out with the focal area in mind. It just kind of reveals itself in the painting. So when you get to a point where you keep going to that one spot, maybe you should make that your focal area.
Mm-hmm.
But,
very nice.
It definitely makes the painting more interesting. Here I'm just going to kind of lightly pull this together. All right.
All right, Tom. Well, that's really terrific. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.